You're not trapped by iron walls as much as you're shaped by the ones you keep building inside yourself. A cage can be made from fear, from old stories, from habits that feel safe, from small expectations that never challenge your soul. You may not call it cage. You may call it caution, realism, loyalty, or protection. But if it keeps shrinking your life, keeping your heart quiet when it should speak, keeping your gifts folded instead of shared, then it is a cage all the same. And the kindest truth can be the one that wakes you gently. You have been training for a smaller life, not because you lack greatness, but because something in you has learned to settle for less than freedom. Breathe with me for a moment. The good news is that what was learned can be unlearned. What was practiced can be changed. What was repeated can be interrupted. The Creator has placed in you a living courage, and courage can grow stronger every time you use it. You do not need to smash every wall at once. You do not need to become fearless overnight. You only need to notice where you have been shrinking, where you have been agreeing to less, where you have been calling fear by gentler names. That noticing is not shame. It is the beginning of release. The moment you see the bars, you can begin to walk toward the door. Remember this truth. Most cages are built slowly. One disappointed hope becomes a guarded heart. One painful criticism becomes a hidden voice saying, "Do not try that again." One failure becomes a rule. One rejection becomes a lifelong hesitation. One hard season becomes a personality. Before long, your life looks calm on the outside but cramped on the inside. You stop reaching. You stop asking. You stop imagining. You stop expecting enough goodness to stretch your shoulders. Yet the soul was not made to live folded forever. It was made to expand, to breathe, to risk, to learn, to grow into a wider field of peace. That is why this message matters. There is a difference between wisdom and fear dressed as wisdom. Wisdom says, "This is not safe, so I will choose carefully." Fear says, "This is not safe, so I will never move." Wisdom pays attention. Fear repeats old alarms until they become a prison. Wisdom opens a window. Fear seals the room. You need discernment, yes. You need boundaries, yes. You need patience, yes. But you do not need a life ruled by constant retreat. A brave soul knows when to pause and when to step. It knows that not every closed door is a warning, and not every open door is an invitation. Some doors are training. Some are tests. Some are opportunities. Some are just noise. Learn the difference. Breathe with me for a moment. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of your own pattern. You know the pattern. You have visited it often. It says, "Do not dream too much. Do not ask too much. Do not need too much. Do not hope too hard. Do not let yourself be disappointed again." And maybe that pattern has been worn smooth by repetition. But worn smooth is not the same as holy. What if the next sentence you speak to yourself is gentler and bolder? What if it says, "I can be careful without becoming closed. I can be honest without becoming hard. I can be wise without becoming afraid"? That sentence opens a door. Remember this truth. A cage can be decorated and still be a cage. It can be polished, explained, and even defended. You may tell yourself it is just your personality, your age, your circumstances, your family history, or your responsibilities. Some of those things are real. But even real things can become excuses if they keep you from moving. Be honest about the difference. There's a part of you that is tired of being safe in ways that cost too much. There's a part of you that longs to breathe deeply without guilt. That part is not selfish. It is calling you home to yourself. You may have trained for a smaller life by over-preparing for disappointment. You learned to expect less, so you would hurt less. You learned to underdream, so you would not be embarrassed. You learned to keep your standards low, so life would not demand courage. But what does that protect in the end? Only a heart that never feels fully alive. And your heart was not made to survive only by numbing itself. It was made to trust, to receive, to build, to hope. The cost of staying small can become far greater than the cost of stretching. Feel in your soul. Growth often looks like losing the comfort of old explanations. It means you stop saying, "This is just how I am," and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" It means you stop calling limitation humility. It means you stop calling self-neglect discipline. It means you stop calling fear common sense. Those old labels can keep you trapped because they sound respectable. But respectful language can still hide a cage. True growth tells the truth gently. It says, this has helped me survive, but it may be keeping me from living. That honesty is powerful enough to begin release. There is no need to shame the self that learned to survive. That self was doing the best it could with the light it had. Honor it, then thank it. Then let it know that the season is changing and the work is changing too. The old you is not evil. It was protective. It was adaptive. It was necessary for a time. But if you keep protecting that version as though it were your whole identity, you may prevent your own becoming. You can love the old self without letting it run the whole house. That is maturity. That is healing. That is freedom arriving quietly. Listen to this. The cage often feels safer because it lowers expectations. When you expect little, you risk little. When you risk little, you hurt little, at least for a while. But eventually the heart starts aching from underuse. It starts aching because it was made for more than caution. It was made for contribution. It was made for joy that is not only occasional. It was made for connection that is not controlled by fear. It was made for a life that feels meaningful from the inside, not merely manageable from the outside. That ache is not condemnation. It is a signal that life wants to reopen. The Creator has placed in you a desire that settled living cannot satisfy forever. That desire may have been buried under responsibility, exhaustion, and old disappointments, but it is still alive. It whispers in the moments when you wonder what else might be possible. It stirs when you see someone living with more confidence, more freedom, more authenticity. Do not resent that stirring. It is not comparing you to others. It is reminding you that your own soul is not meant to remain locked in place. The desire itself is a holy signal. It is saying, there is more room than this. You do not have to burn down every wall in anger to become free. Sometimes the gentler path is wiser. You can question a rule before you obey it. You can test a fear before you trust it. You can ask whether the wall is protecting your heart or merely protecting your discomfort. That question matters. Some walls deserve respect. Some need repair. Some need a door. Some need to come down. Wisdom helps you tell the difference. It keeps you from destroying what protects you and from protecting what destroys you. That discernment is a form of love. Breathe with me for a moment. Think of one place where you have been training for less than you deserve. Maybe it is in how you speak about yourself. Maybe it is in the opportunities you never pursue. Maybe it is in the relationships you tolerate. Maybe it is in the dreams you postpone because you think they are too large for your life. Ask what fear has taught you there. Then ask whether fear deserves to keep teaching. It may not. A new teacher may be waiting in the form of truth, patience, and kinder self-respect. Let that new teacher speak. You are not disloyal for wanting a larger life. You are not arrogant for wanting more room to grow. You are not reckless for questioning a pattern that has kept you cramped. In fact, it may be the most responsible thing you can do. Some people think loyalty means remaining unchanged. But real loyalty to your life means caring enough to let it become healthier. That may involve grieving the old coping mechanisms. It may involve disappointing some expectations. It may involve stepping into a little uncertainty. Yet uncertainty is often the hallway to freedom, not the enemy of it. Listen to this. If your life keeps repeating the same emotional size, the same relational size, the same inner limits, you may have been building around fear instead of possibility. That is not a moral failure. It is a signal. Signals are useful when they are heard. They show you where to turn. So look at the repeated frustration. Ask what it is teaching. Ask what you keep avoiding because avoiding feels easier. Ask what would become possible if you trusted yourself more and fear less. Your future may not need more force. It may need more willingness. Willingness is often the seed of change. The smaller life often hides behind noble words. It says, I am being realistic. I am protecting my peace. I know my limits. Those can all be true, but they can also be used to avoid growth. So inspect them kindly. Is this wisdom, or is it fear wearing a polished face? Is this a boundary or a barricade? Is this rest, or is it resignation? These are gentle but important questions. They help you protect what is healthy, without surrendering the rest of your life to caution. Balance matters. Courage matters. Honest self-inquiry matters. Feel it in your soul. A wider life does not always mean more chaos. Sometimes it means more honesty, more room to breathe, more room to choose, more room to say no without guilt and yes without panic, more room to create without comparing, more room to love without shrinking, more room to be seen without performing. That kind of widening is not loud, but it is transformative. You may not become a different person. You may simply become more yourself than the cage allowed. That is still a miracle of becoming. It is a miracle with quiet roots and visible fruit. There will be moments when the old voice tells you that stretching is dangerous. Listen carefully, acknowledge it, then ask whether the danger is real or merely familiar. Sometimes both are present. Wisdom does not ignore real danger. It also does not exaggerate it. You can move cautiously and still move. You can be thoughtful and still be brave. You can honor your nervous system without letting it become your jailer. That is the art of growth. It is not reckless leap. It is faithful step. One step, then another, each one loosening a wall you no longer need. The Creator has not made you to live forever in the language of less. Less hope, less voice, less joy, less risk, less self-trust, less vision. You may have used that language to survive, but you do not need it to define your future. Begin replacing less with enough, and enough with more of what is good. More honesty, more peace, more courage, more clarity, more compassion, more room, more breath, more life. This is not about becoming greedy for experience. It is about becoming faithful to the size of the soul you were given. That soul asks for expansion. Remember this truth. The old cage may still call your name out of habit. It may feel familiar when you're tired. It may tempt you when life gets noisy. That is okay. You do not have to obey every familiar call. You can pause. You can listen for what is healthier. You can choose the larger life one honest decision at a time. The cage does not lose power because you hate it. It loses power because you stop feeding it. Stop feeding the fear that says smaller is safer. Start feeding the courage that says growth is worth it. There is a tenderness in realizing that your limitations were once acts of care. Be gentle with that realization. Do not make yourself the villain in your own story. You are learning with the tools you had. You are protecting what you thought needed protection. Now you are being invited to learn a different way. A way that is softer without becoming weak. A way that is open without becoming naive. A way that trusts the wisdom inside you to recognize what no longer deserves the same level of control. That invitation is grace. Receive it with quiet gratitude. Breathe with me for a moment. Imagine what it would feel like to make one choice that your future self would thank you for. Not 10 choices. One boundary. One honest conversation. One dream revisited. One habit released. One risk taken with care. One afternoon spent with your own thoughts instead of your distractions. One prayer asking for courage to live bigger. Small openings become bigger openings. The cage rarely disappears in one dramatic moment. More often it loosens through repeated acts of truth. Those acts may seem small, but they're the hand on the lock. You do not need to wait until you feel completely ready to begin living larger. Readiness often follows action. The first step may feel awkward. The second may feel uncertain. The third may feel like relief. That is normal. New life can feel strange before it feels natural. Do not let strangeness fool you into thinking you are doing it wrong. You are simply learning a larger way of being. The soul needs time to adjust when the room gets bigger. Give yourself that time. It is not wasted. It is part of the becoming. Listen to this. One reason cages remain is because they're defended by stories. Stories like, I am safer here. I am too old to change. I have always been this way. Nothing else will work. Those stories sound solid, but they are often just fear repeating itself with confidence. You can write back. You can answer those stories with a different truth. I am learning. I'm not too late. I can change one step at a time. I do not need certainty to begin. I only need willingness. That reply can begin to dissolve the old script. The Creator has placed in you the ability to choose meaning over numbing. That choice is powerful. Numbing may feel like rest, but often it is only a pause in feeling. Meaning is different. It asks you to be present, to participate, to risk caring, to risk creating, to risk being changed. That risk can feel like a lot when you have lived behind a cage for a long time. Yet your life becomes richer in proportion to your presence. When you show up fully, even imperfectly, you begin to inhabit your own days instead of just surviving them. Feel it in your soul. You may have trained so hard for a smaller life that expansion feels irresponsible. It is not. Responsibility includes becoming more alive, not less. It includes letting your gifts serve more than fear. It includes admitting that the soul can starve under too much caution. If your heart has been hungry, do not ignore it. Feed it with truth. Feed it with good company. Feed it with honest work. Feed it with rest. Feed it with prayer. Feed it with steps that match the life you say you want. A fed soul becomes brave. You may wonder how to know what wall should remain and what wall should go. A simple question can help. Does this wall help me live with clarity and peace? Or does it simply keep me from feeling? Does it support my well-being? Or does it protect my fear? Does it honor truth? Or does it keep me from growth? Ask gently and honestly. You do not need to rush the answer. The answer will often reveal itself in the texture of your life, in the amount of peace or tension you carry, in the freedom or heaviness you feel. There is a quiet power in noticing that your own assumptions may have become your jailer. Assumptions can build a cage faster than enemies can. I cannot fail. I must not need help. I should not hope that much. I need to stay small to stay safe. These assumptions can be inherited, taught, or born from pain. But assumptions are not eternal law. They are thoughts that have been repeated long enough to sound like truth. You can challenge them. You can question them. You can replace them with something more alive and more compassionate. That process is freedom in motion. Remember this truth. A wider life asks for more than motivation. It asks for sustained trust. Trust that change can happen slowly. Trust that your heart can handle disappointment. Trust that your gifts are worth using. Trust that not every risk leads to ruin. Trust that wisdom and courage can live together in you. That trust is built through practice. Every time you take one honest step, you teach yourself that movement is possible. Every time you remain open after fear, you teach yourself that the world is not only a cage. It can also be a field. The Creator has not withdrawn from your becoming. Even now, grace is present in the tension between who you were and who you are becoming. That tension is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of transition. Transition can feel awkward. It can feel like loss and hope at once. That is because something old is loosening while something new is not fully formed yet. Stay with the process. Do not rush the in-between. There's holy work happening there. There's learning. There's pruning. There's growth. There's a future being prepared in you. You are not required to protect every old limit just because it once kept you alive. Thank it, and then ask whether it still serves your life. You may discover that some limits can be honored with kindness and others can be retired with gratitude. That is how maturity speaks. It does not curse the past. It does not worship it either. It learns from it. It says, "You helped me then, and now I'm growing beyond you." That sentence can be said with love. It can be said without disrespect. It can open the next stage. Breathe with me for a moment. Imagine your shoulders lowering because you are no longer defending a smaller self. Imagine speaking more freely because the fear of being too much no longer controls you. Imagine making room in your schedule, your relationships, and your thoughts for the life you actually want. Not the life that merely passes time. The life that feels awake. The life that feels aligned. The life that lets your soul stretch without apology. That image is not fantasy. It is a possible future. One clear choice at a time, you can move toward it. Listen to this. The cage is strongest when it remains unnamed. Once named, it loses some of its shadow. So name it. Call it what it is. Not all the time. Not harshly. Just honestly. This is fear. This is habit. This is inherited caution. This is a pattern of shrinking. This is a wall I no longer need to honor in the same way. Naming is powerful because it separates the self from the structure. You're not the cage. You are the one who can notice it. That awareness is the doorway to change. You may still need patience with yourself. Growth does not mean you suddenly become someone else overnight. It means you begin to choose differently, and those different choices begin to reshape your inner world. Be patient with the pace, but not passive with the process. Stay engaged. Stay honest. Stay kind. Celebrate the tiny steps. A tiny step toward truth is not tiny to the soul. It is enormous. It tells your spirit that you are willing to live in a wider way. That willingness is the beginning of a life that no longer trains for less. The Creator has given you enough light for the next step. Not the whole staircase. Just the next step. That is enough. Trust that. Use what you know. Honor what you feel. Move when it is time. Pause when it is wise. But do not confuse pause with permanent retreat. Do not confuse caution with a calling to remain caged. You can walk carefully and still walk. You can be gentle and still grow. You can be thoughtful and still become larger than your old fear allowed. That possibility is already alive in you. Feel it in your soul. There is relief on the other side of honest expansion. Relief from pretending. Relief from shrinking. Relief from over-explaining your limits. Relief from living in a posture that is always braced. Expansion, when healthy, lets the breath deepen. It lets the mind quiet. It lets the heart open. It lets your gifts find their place. It lets your relationships become more honest. It lets your days feel less like confinement and more like participation. That relief is worth the discomfort of the first steps. You are allowed to want that relief. There will be moments when fear tries to pull you back into the old room. That is when you pause and remember why you left. You left because the room was too small for your soul. You left because survival is not the same as living. You left because your heart was asking for more room to breathe. Keep that reason close. Let speak when doubt speaks. Let remind you that growth is not betrayal. It is loyalty to the life that still wants to unfold. Keep moving. Keep choosing. Keep making space. Now let this settle quietly inside you. You are not building a cage because you are weak. You built it because you're trying to stay safe. That deserves compassion. But compassion must also be honest. What once protected you may now be limiting you. You do not need to hate yourself for that. You only need to notice. Notice. Thank. Release. Replace. That is the rhythm of freedom. It does not rush. It does not condemn. It does not pretend the past never mattered. It simply refuses to let the past become your permanent address. So reflect today on where you have been training for less than your life can hold. Reflect on the habits, the fears, the roles, and the stories that have kept you small. Then ask what would happen if you chose just a little more openness, just a little more courage, just a little more truth. Connect with the divine in your own way. Pray for strength. Pray for clarity. Pray for the courage to stop protecting what is no longer serving you. If this message helped you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more daily guidance, comfort, and encouragement. Your next breath can be the start of a wider life.